Hi, everyone. My name is Leo Salvaggio, and we're in the Multimedia Labs, and I'm really excited to do this workshop on Instagram AR filter basics. So again, my name is Leo. I use he, him pronouns, and my colleague Kelly over there. You want to introduce yourself, Kelly?
Hi, I'm Kelly. Sorry, I was listening to you two ways. I also help manage the multi labs.
Awesome. And so I know that Lei, we got to talk earlier about whether or not you were a member of the Multimedia Labs, and you are, right? Lana, I was going to ask if you were a member as well.
Yeah, I think I signed up for it.
Excellent. Cool. All right. So anyone on the stream, we are live streaming, which is kind of fun. So we might have some people there. If you're part of the Brown community and not yet a member of the MMLs, you can join online by doing a short online orientation. And if you go to our website, you'll find instructions on how to do that. It's very easy, and then you can get access to our spaces and things like 3D printers, large format printers, and we provide trainings and all that kind of support for that. I also want to mention some of our upcoming programming that we have coming up. So here is our workshop for today. Next Thursday, we're going to be having an open house for Black creators on campus that's started by our incredible CTA, David, over there, who's starting a new group. And so we're excited about that. Next Friday, we'll also be having an intro to 3D modeling in Blender. That RSVP opened up a little while ago, and I think we still have a few spots. So please feel free to check that out. And then last, we have retouching headshots in Photoshop. So we're going to be exploring some of the new neural filters that have just been kind of published for retouching. And then I also am like an old school Photoshop retoucher, so I'll be going, back in the day with selecting and and copying and pasting onto layers and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, that will be happening Friday, March 18th, right before spring break, right? Spring break is in March, right? I think. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do, or I'm going to ask you all to do, is I want you to actually try out the filter that we are going to be testing today. So feel free to get out your smartphones if you have one and scan the QR code that is on the screen. For those of you in the room, you may need to physically move and get up to scan it, but I was able to do it from where I'm sitting with my phone. I also found that, oddly enough, if you pinch zoom in, sometimes that helps. It works, right? Now, what you might not be seeing is you might not be seeing the sunglasses filter, the sunglasses portion of the filter when you open it up in Instagram. You should get a notification. It'll open up your Instagram account, and then the lens will load. If you're in the room, you may not see the sunglasses because it may be having trouble detecting your face because we're wearing masks. But you should see the other kind of components. So, was everyone able to do that? Good? Lei? Awesome. So essentially today we are going to be recreating this filter together, and we're going to have a few things that we're going to be looking at. Our first goal is to kind of understand the Spark AR interface. Spark AR is the platform that's produced by Facebook, by Meta, that produces, that allows us to kind of publish these filters onto their platform. So we're going to learn a little bit about the interface and get comfortable with that. And then we're going to learn how to do 3 different types of actions. We're going to learn about face trackers, which is what allows those sunglasses to stay on your face as you move. We're going to learn about emitters, which is a type of like particle system, which is that snow, that MML kind of snow thing that's happening. And then we're also going to be learning about how to create these frames using a rectangle object. And then we will also briefly discuss testing and publishing on the platform. Any questions so far? Cool. All right. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Spark AR. Okay, so, oh, also I should ask, was everyone able to download the texture images that were that I mentioned in the email? No? Okay, great. Okay, so we've opened up Spark AR, and the first thing that I want to mention is this section called Create New. So one of the great things about Spark AR is that they've already produced all of these templates here that take some of their most popular kind of iterations of a filter and allow you to use them and then kind of like just replace certain things with your own. So for instance, if we were to open up like face decoration, we would see the 3D model for the glasses and the face tracker would all be there, and all you would have to do is kind of like replace some things. So what's really great about thinking about these templates is that you don't always have to start everything from scratch. You could find something here that does what you're trying to go for, and then just change parts of it to suit yourself and then publish that as your own filter, which is kind of nice. Another great thing is that a lot of these templates come from their tutorials. So if you go over here to Learn, you'll see that they have a bunch of different tutorials, and they also kind of label these tutorials based on whether you're beginner, intermediate, and give you kind of an idea of how long it will take to look through some of these things. So I'm actually going to click on this beginner creating a face tracking effect, and it will open up the Spark AR Hub. This is where you're going to be looking at things like tutorials, finding out about different objects, and it's also where you will be taking a look at your published filters and getting stats on them, like how many opens, how many interacts, and stuff like that. So what's really useful about this is that the tutorial has a video that you can watch, but if you prefer text and just being able to go at your own pace, the entire tutorial is written out with images and pictures here. And if you've done anything like LinkedIn Learning before, you can also download the example project. So I'm going to do that now, and feel free to as well if you like. And when we download the example project, you're going to see that there's actually 2 folders in that download. And how do I, whoops, I need to, I can't like, that's really weird. Okay, we'll do it like this. So there's 2 folders in there. One of them is called Face Sticker Finished Project, and one of them is called Face Sticker Unfinished Project. So if you open the Face Sticker Unfinished Project and open this file, you'll be able to follow along with the tutorial on the website. If you want to use that finished filter as a template, then you can go into the finished project one and open this one, and that's what I'm going to do. So for this first section, feel free to follow along if you like. You don't necessarily have to. I think it's probably more important to be able to kind of see the core concepts of the interface. But again, if you want to follow along, you absolutely can. So you'll see that it's giving me this option of saving a project. The versions of Spark AR change all the time. There's new updates every week. So this is normal. You can just go ahead and click Open. And essentially, this is what our interface looks like when we're actually working on a filter. So I'm going to go over a few things here. And then we will actually start building the filter. So let's break down the kind of panels that we have. The first really useful panel that's over here on the complete left has to do a lot with like your workspace and also your video. So one of the great things about Spark AR that I really like is that they have these pre-programmed videos of people that you can use of all different ethnicities, sizes, shapes, which is really, really useful, facial hair. And actually, it's really good to test your filters on all of them, just because different dimensions have different things. I remember I was doing something on my face and it fit perfectly on my face, but then when I went to one of these faces, it was like way too large. And that's because I have like a huge head. And speaking of, you can also use a built-in camera like this one. Now, actually, I'm surprised that that's working because it as you can see, it has difficulty with the mask. So normally I would suggest possibly using this built-in your own webcam. But for today, because we're indoors and wearing masks, I'm going to use one of these model videos here. And again, we can get there from hitting this camera option. Another really useful feature is the ability to pause the filter. And what I mean by that is when you click pause, you are essentially telling it to stop any of its logic so that you can kind of catch up with it. We'll see why this is important in a little bit, but whenever you're kind of making a change to the orientation of an object in this kind of 3D space, which we'll talk about in a second, it's good to make sure that you're pausing and playing so that you're not, like, the world isn't moving while you're trying to move this object. It can get very spacey. All right. The next section that we are going to look at is this scene tab. So this scene tab essentially is a collection of all the different objects that are in your filter. And so you've got your device. So this is simulating a device. You have the camera that's on your phone, this is a virtual camera. And there's also an ambient light and stuff like that in here. Don't worry too much about these. What we're going to look at here is the face tracker. So the face tracker is an object. It's a set of code that automatically finds faces in a scene, like when you hold it up to your friend or when you're taking a selfie, and is able to track something onto that face or to follow the movements of that face. So this is an object, and then this is another type of object called a face mesh. A face mesh is an actual 3D model of a generic face that, when used with the face tracker, kind of follows that face. So if we press play, there is a 3D model of a face here. Now, we can't quite see that just yet, but I will demonstrate in just a moment.
There in the big.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. Yes. So the next section that we're going to look at is this one, which is the viewport. And so the viewport is where we can kind of see all of our objects and how they're interacting in this three-dimensional space. You can change whether it's in 3D or 2D by going like this, hitting mode, and then edit 3D objects, mode 2D objects, vice versa. And here you can see if I select a directional light, it allows me to kind of manipulate this. Also in the viewport up here, these are what are called our manipulators. So these things allow us to move things in space, which is this one here, rotate things in space, and then scale things in space. And we will get to that in just a little bit. I'm not going to quite get there just now. All right, so we have our viewport, and then we also have this. So this is our simulation. This is what you're going to approximately see once you publish the filter and you put it on your phone. What's nice is that if you have a specific type of device, so for instance, like let's say you have the iPhone X, or you have the a Google Pixel 2 XL, you can change it for your specific device, which is kind of nice. It's a good preview option. This can be undocked, meaning that, it was undocked, sorry. So you can take this out and make it as large as you want, which can be really, really useful because sometimes you'll be working with like small details and it'll be really great to like make it larger. Or you can dock it so that it's always in this viewport. Any questions so far? Awesome. So, on the right, this is our properties panel. And the properties panel is a contextual menu, meaning that when you select an object, it will change what the properties are based on that object, right? So if we select this face mesh, which again is that 3D model that's highlighted here that Kelly mentioned to us, you'll see that it has a bunch of different properties, including whether it's visible or not. So if I were to click on this, the emoji stickers will go away. And there's lots of different things here. We'll also notice that it has a material set, and that material is called face mat. And we will talk a little bit about that as well. So all you need to know is that when you want to manipulate an object or an asset, which we are going to get into, you are going to select it, and all of your options are going to be in the properties panel. So this is where you're going to make the magic happen, so to speak. Next, we're going to look at our assets panel. Assets are things that you are using in your filter that aren't necessarily objects coming from the program. So it's where you can kind of bring in your own things. And there's two types of assets primarily that we're going to look at today, which are materials and textures. So I've been recently teaching myself how to sew, so I'm going to use a clothing analogy to kind of try and explain what this is, because it took me a second to wrap my head around it. So your object is the type of garment that you are creating. It is like a blouse or a jacket or a pair of jeans or pants. Your material is what it's made out of. Are those pants made out of denim, or are they made out of linen, or are they made out of canvas? And your texture is the visual qualities of those pants. Are they black jeans? Are they blue with polka dots? Do they have rips in them? So as we go through this, and I think it'll make a little bit more sense when I show you this.
Are they related, like a texture and material? Like, can you have like the textures part of a material, or are they separate?
I feel like this is a trick question. I'm not sure.
I wasn't sure.
No, so you can change. Oh yes, okay, yes. So you can replace the type of texture that any material has. So
texture is part of a material.
Texture is a part of material, but texture is also where we get to manipulate the most things. So I'll show you an example. So if we go into face material and we go into our properties panel over here, again, this is where we get to change things, right? Right now, you'll see that the texture has been set to this face sticker. If I were to instead, let's say, remove that, now you can see what the actual 3D mesh of the face mesh object looks like. And if I were to go back into this material, I could do things like change the color. And I could also do things like change the shader type. Without getting too into the weeds, shader type is essentially like if you have 3D lights in your scene, it's how it's affected by it. So for optimization, flat is usually really, really good, but we can show you what happens when you change them. So if we were to go to standard, notice that it is now way more three-dimensional. Like you've got shadows underneath the eyebrow ridge, underneath the nose, as compared to when it's flat, right? You can also do things like there's an option for face paint. Now, this is probably not the best example to use here, but if I go back into my texture and I apply the face sticker texture, and if I undock this and make it larger, you'll see that it now looks like those emojis have some kind of transparency to them, as if they've been painted on the face, as opposed to when it's flat. So these are the qualities that a material has. You can change the shader type. You can change if it has a color. You can change if it has a texture that you've uploaded. And so when I was talking about how powerful templates are, this is what I mean. So this came with a texture. I'm going to say I want a new texture. And I'm going to, let's say, upload the MML square particle image. So this is just an image that I created in Photoshop. It could also just be an image that you download off of Google. It is just a JPEG or a PNG type image. So whether you're making your own or you're finding ones off the web, doesn't matter. If I click open, see what happens. So now that texture has been mapped to that material, and that material is on that 3D face. And again, if we change the shader type to, like, let's say something like physically based, you'll see that there's now like a gloss, and you can do things like change how metallic it is, how rough it is, all these different types of things. And you'll notice that these surface parameters change based on what type of shader type I have selected. So what's most important here is to just remember you have objects that come from the program itself in the scene. You have assets that you bring into the program through one way or another. And whenever you need to manipulate one of those two things, you are going to use the properties panel on the right. Any questions thus far? Okay, so I'm going to use this template as a starting point to create our filter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this additional face tracker, and I'm going to work with this face tracker. Now, actually, let me undo that for a second. Notice here that in the objects that this object is nested underneath the face tracker one. Few things about that. You don't really need to worry about them super right now, but you need a new face tracker object for every face you believe might be in the scene. So if you only have one face tracker app and you put it on a group, it's only going to apply the effect to one face. If you think that if you want to create a filter where you want up to 5 people to have an effect, you have to add a face tracker for each one. But what I want to point out is, notice that if I delete this face mesh, just the face mesh leaves and the face tracker is still there. If I delete the face tracker, then both the face tracker and the face mesh have been deleted. And that's because these have a relationship of being parent and children is what they're called. So whenever you see something nested, it is getting some kind of information, or it is somehow tied to the parent object. One way to illustrate this, maybe I haven't tested it, but here we go, is if I were to take this face mesh and move it out of that relationship with the parent, see how the face mesh stays in place? It's because it's no longer receiving information from the face tracker, because the relationship is no longer parent-child. If I were to put it back in, hopefully, yes, there we go. It works. And actually, I'm going to X out we'll look at this patch editor later, but we don't need it for right now. So, okay. So what I'm going to do is for this thing, for the next thing that we're going to do, we actually don't even need the face mesh. So I'm going to delete the face mesh. And from here on out, you will want to follow along with me. So if you didn't download this, that's fine. What you're going to do is you're going to add, in fact, I will just delete this. You are going to click this plus button, and you are going to add an object. Now you can search for objects here, or you can scroll down and you'll see that they have really, really nice descriptions next to them. And you can also view additional documentation if you have questions about them, which is great. But for right now, we're just going to select Face Tracker because we kind of know what that does now. So now we have a face tracker. Instead of adding a face mesh, so we're going to add another thing. You'll see that face mesh is here. Instead of adding a face mesh, we're going to add a plane. And a plane is just like a plane in space. It is two-dimensional, it's a square, it's a rectangle. And the reason we're doing that is because the sunglasses object that we're going to put in, it's a flat image, and it actually looks, it's not something that needs to be sculpted onto the face. Those sunglasses are actually quite sculptural, so they're just kind of flat anyway in real life. And it's also just an excuse to show you another object because you've already seen the face mesh object. So I'm going to select plane and hit insert. And now you'll see that we have this plane. You'll also notice that the plane object is not currently a child of the face tracker. So we're going to select the plane and we're going to hover over face tracker. And now you'll see that the plane reacts to the information of the face. Good so far? Excellent. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into this plane. We're going to go over to the properties panel. And actually, just so that we don't get confused, I'm going to delete all of my other stuff. You wouldn't normally have to do this, but I just want to make sure that I'm not confusing anyone as we move forward. So with the plane, the first thing that we're going to do is you see this checkerboard here. That's not actual material or texture. That is just a visual conceit that the program tells us to let us know that there's nothing there. So if you were to publish this, you would not see that checkerboard. So that's just to let us know that it's currently empty. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to assign that object a material. So we are creating the material. And so in the properties panel, you're going to hit plus. And you'll notice that now we have a material in our assets folder. And I'm going to rename this material. You just double click on the name. I'm going to rename this sunglasses material. And this is just so that I know what it is at a glance. If you were doing a very basic thing, you wouldn't necessarily have to name them, but if you're making complicated filters, it's really nice to be able to rename them. So from here, I'm going to add a texture. So I'm going to hit choose file, and I'm going to locate the MML sunglasses image that you all should have downloaded beforehand, and then click open. Yeah. All right, so before I move forward, I just want to see, is everyone with me? You good, Lay? Good. All right, so this is where it's going to be important to pause. So I'm going to pause this. And you do that by pressing the little button over here. And now we're going to select the plane, and you'll see that in our plane window, it has it's been selected. And what we essentially need to do now is we need to adjust it so that it makes sense as an object on the face. So the first thing that I might do is I might move it up. And so I'm going to use the movement option here, which is these like 4 arrows. And then I will select one of the cardinal arrows. So there's 3 of them, one for up. This one is deceptive. It's deep. So it's like, do you want to push it back in or out? And then the red one is left or right. So I might push it up. And this is where you might need to go back and forth between playing and pausing. So I need another angle. I want to see it from there. Okay, so maybe I actually need to bring it down a little bit. And now I'm going to look at the scale. So you do the scale by pressing this one up here, which is like the 2 boxes. And then I can change the scale based on a single dimension. So I'm going to use the top one to shrink it out so that the proportions are a little bit better. And then I'm going to use the one on the right to make it wide enough for the face. And here I'm going to, again, I'm going to see what it looks like from other perspectives. Okay. So you can see that it's probably still a little low. So I'm going to go back to my movement.
It's kind of good there.
Yeah, it's not bad, right? It's not bad. But also, as he was moving his head, you might see that it also feels like it's not actually sitting on his face. Like head on, it's okay. But when we get him to, yeah, like right there. So now I'm going to take that depth one, which is the blue one, and I'm going to try and just push it back ever so slightly. So now it feels a little bit more like it's on his face. So out, oops, probably something like that. Let's see how that looks. All right. We probably just need to make it a little bit wider. So I'm going to go back to my transform, which is the 2 boxes, make it slightly wider, and then let's see how that goes. Not bad, not bad. I might also swap who I'm simulating with to see how it looks like on other people. That's also not bad. Excellent. All right, so I'm actually pretty happy with that. So to review, we took an object called a plane, we gave it a material called sunglasses material, and we gave that material a texture, which we uploaded, called the MML sunglasses. Now here, you could also mess around with that shader type. You could make it face paint, but then it's not going to quite look like sunglasses. So I think where it was, which is either standard or flat, I think flat. Yeah, I think flat is a little bit more believable, is good. You can also do things on this property panel like change the opacity, right? Which is kind of cool. So there's lots of different things you can do on this property panel. Play with the property panel after the workshop. All right. So we have most of this already set up to go. The next thing that we're going to do is figure out that snow thing, which is called the emitter. And an emitter is a particle type system. It just means that there's like these little sprites that kind of shoot out, and it's a. How would you describe a particle system? I don't really know how to describe one, Kelly.
Just like anything like fireworks, anything that like shoots out. It's basically copies of one object spread out in space.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our scene panel because we need a new type of object. And we're going to scroll down until we see something called emitter. Why is it not there? Environment light. It's not particle system. It should be emitter. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. That's really funny. Okay, let us try this then. Insert. Okay. There you go. Okay. So it is called an emitter, but when you go into the objects panel, it says particle system. I don't know why the names don't match, but you're going to click on particle system. And you'll notice that right now the emitter is, actually I'm not sure if it doesn't look like it's a child of face tracker, but just to be sure, I'm going to move it up here just so that we know that it's not. All right, so as you can see, if we pause, you'll see that yet again, I don't think I can zoom in much more than that, but you'll see yet again, just like the plane, we have that no information checkerboard type thing, right? So if we click on emitter and go into our properties panel, you'll see that there is a lot more options. So for instance, the first thing is the type. So right now we have a point, and if we play it, you can kind of see that there's a point right here, and these things are kind of generating from that point up in one way. I'm actually going to change the point to, I think I liked plane, but I'll show you what the different ones are. So in this one, they're emitting from a line, and you can actually change the length of that line to, like, let's say 0.5. You can see now that line is like off screen to 0.2. All right. So, that was 2, sorry, 0.2. There we go. And actually, I'm going to choose plane. What I like about plane is that the sizes, I think, kind of change, if I recall correctly. So I hope you see that, like, I'm still figuring it out as I'm teaching you guys. So don't be afraid to, like, just try things out. But now that I changed this to 0.3, you'll see that there are some squares that are larger than others in here. And so I think what this is this is a range between, I want some this size that are the smallest, and the largest I want to be 0.3. So let's test that, maybe go 0.6. Yeah, so it's much more obvious now, right? Okay, so I'm going to bring that back down to, like, let's say 0.3. And there's a few other things that we can do. So right now, you'll see that the plane is emitting up, right? Which does not look like snow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause. And now I'm going to go to the rotate option here. And I'm just going to rotate the blue axis around 180 degrees so that now the emitter starts coming down. You see that? Good? Okay, excellent. You will also notice that the snow is coming out of his forehead right now. So I'm also going to go to the movement adjuster, and I'm going to move it up in space. So I'm probably going to go, like, right there. Now, in our regular filter, the snow comes all the way down. So if we keep looking under particle here, you'll see that the particles have a lifespan of 0.4 seconds. That's why they're kind of dying out very quickly. If we change this to 1 second, now it's coming down even longer. And if we change it now then to, like, let's say 3 seconds, it should reach all the way. In fact, if you look in the viewport over here, you can see that it actually extends past what the camera can see, which is kind of nice, if I do say so myself. All right, so we have the kind of logic of this set up now. What do you think our next move is going to be?
Put in texture of the M.
Yes, yes. And in order to put in a texture, we have to have a
Material.
Yes, excellent. Sorry, I'm very cheesy. Like, I want the adoration of, like, a third grader. So well, teacher, I mean, you get me. All right, anyway, so yes, so you'll see that there's this option for material. And also, as you can see, there's all different types of things here. So play with this as you like. You can also change the shape to be like a star. Look at that. Ooh, that is cheesy. Or you can make it a cube. And actually have the cube rotate. But we're going to stick with plane, and we're going to create a material by going to material and pressing plus. So this will create a brand new material, and we're going to hit create new material. And now you'll see that we have a plane material 0. So I'm going to change that again, and I'm going to put MML snow material. And again, it doesn't matter what you call it as long as you can identify it. And then we're going to go over here to the material, have that selected, go back to the properties panel, because now we're looking at the properties of the material, and we're going to create a new texture. We're going to select our MML square particle, And bam, look at that. I mean, glorious. Now, you will notice that currently the snow is going behind the goggles. I'm going to see if I can fix this really quickly. It's not really worth like spending a lot of time trying to fix, but one of the things that I found very interesting is that like all of these objects are like right on top of each other. So like if you look at the face mesh or the face tracker of the plane, when he opens his mouth wide, it pushes the plane forward a little bit and then comes back. So I think in order to fix this, what I want to do is I want to select the emitter. And this is where we need to pause. And I think what I actually want to do is I want to bring it closer to the camera space so that none of it falls. Did I do it right? Okay. Yeah. But now the particles have gotten larger, right? So now I might go back to, where was it? So I need to go to emitter. I might go to the size, and I might change this from 0.5 as the smallest to 0.2, and let's see what happens. That size is a lot more acceptable to me. Still a little large, but we're going to leave it there. Any questions on this? Okay, great. So now we're going to work with our last thing, which is creating a frame. So we are going to create yet another object. We're going to go here, and we are going to look for a 2D object. And what we're really interested in is a rectangle. So I'm going to select that, insert. Now notice that when I selected the rectangle, we also got a canvas object as a parent. This is kind of a weird thing. The only way that I've been able to kind of think about it is that like you can't draw a rectangle in air. So you need to declare that there is a canvas that you're drawing this rectangle on, if that makes sense. So it happens automatically. You don't really need to worry about the canvas. We're just going to look at the rectangle. So you'll notice that yet again, we have another rectangle and we see that checkerboard, meaning that it is empty. There's no information in it. It doesn't have a material assigned to it. It doesn't have a texture assigned to it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to, since we want this to be our frame, actually, you know what? For this one, it might be easiest if we create the material first. So let's go ahead and click them here, and we're going to create new material. And you'll see we get another material 0 here. I'm going to change this to MML frame material. And now I'm going to select the MML frame material, and I'm going to provide it a texture, just as we have this whole time. We're going to go new texture, and I'm going to select MML frame for InstaFilter. Okay, cool. And so you'll see that this frame, like I designed it in Photoshop to be a rectangle, but it's a square because the plane is currently a square. And if I go back to this plane over here, or the rectangle, sorry, I can do things like change its width and height. So I could make this to be 50. And so you can see how that changes. So the plane is just like, think of it as like the stretchable kind of thing, or the rectangle, I should say. But what we actually do is, since what we want is we want it to be kind of a frame that's on this thing, we're going to go here, and if you click on it and then hover, you'll get this option for fill width. And so that means that it's going to always try to fill the width of your camera screen. And we're going to do that again. why can't, no. Okay, so maybe what it is you need to hit relative first and then click in and then fill height. And so then we have our frame. Now, what's important to acknowledge is the reason that it's a frame is because what I uploaded is a PNG. PNG is an image file format that allows for transparency. And you'll notice if you look into the 3D portion of the viewport that there's no actual information in here, and that's why you can see through. So if you're not familiar with PNGs, that's okay. That's something that you can learn pretty easily. But you can also download PNGs off Google. It's just an image file that has transparency. Any questions here? Excellent. And so again, you'll see that the snow is in front. I think again, if we were, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. Kelly, how are we doing on time?
About 5 more minutes.
Okay, no, ooh, okay, so forget that. I'm gonna say, okay, so there's one other thing that I want to show that's really cool, which is that this has a patch editor. So if anyone's worked in Max MSP or Scratch before, you can create logic just using visual representation instead of having to code things out. So I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing that we're going to do is, and like, if this is all, like, this is more than enough. What I'm showing you is like a kind of like extra teasery thing, so don't worry about it. But I'm going to view. So if I go show patch editor, you'll see this little grid here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the emitter. And do you see how some of these parameters have this little arrow? This arrow allows you to create that object in the patch editor. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. If I click on this in the patch editor, this pops up. And this allows me to manipulate whether or not the emitter is visible or not, just by clicking on this. Now, obviously, there isn't a button in the thing right now, but in the patch editor, you can do things like this. You can set up a logic for screen tap. So I'm going to add this patch, and now I have a logic that allows me to understand when the screen is being tapped. And if I take connect where it says gesture state, oops, and I connect it into here. Now, this other object popped in because the program is smart enough to say, hey, you actually need this other object in order to make what you want to do work. But with just these three objects, if I had to go into here, I can tell it to simulate touch, which means that when I click on the screen, it's going to act as if my thumb is clicking on like a real phone. And that will turn the emitter, for all intents and purposes, on and off. Now, the emitter is not actually turned on and off. It's just, we no longer see it. So this is how you can add some interactivity into your filters. So last thing, and I'm sorry, we're going to have to rush through this part, but it's pretty self-explanatory. There's two things. One is that as you're going through, you may want to test on your actual device. So because your device is connected to your Instagram or Facebook account, and this is also, if you click on test on device, you can tell it to send like a prototype to your Instagram account. Now, this is probably going to take way too long for us to be able to do now, but essentially when that fills up, you should get like a notification on your Instagram account. Oh, cool. And then you should be able to, so for the stream.
Because the studio is connected to your account.
Yeah, preview. And then, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to show that. Exactly. So that can be really, really useful if you wanna try it on an actual thing, because remember, all of this is like a lab environment. It's very, very controlled. You want to see how your logic and all of that stuff works in the real world. Once you're satisfied with it, you're going to go here to actually publish. Now, this is what's so great is that you can publish a new effect, or if you've already created one, you can update an existing effect without having to go through the entire process again. So for instance, if I hit update, it's going to ask me, which one do I want to update? In your case, this is going to be new for you. You would hit publish new effect. And here, as long as these two check marks are good, you're essentially good to go. You can hit upload. And what's going to happen is it's going to open up that Spark AR hub and ask you for some additional information. What do you want to call this? What type of experience is it? Where do you want to publish it? And once you have all that info in there, you can just go ahead and hit submit. And that's pretty much all there is to it. It's really, really easy. It can take up to like a day or two in order to for them to like approve it. But once you have that, you can actually like send links. So this is like what I have. You can like share links to people to like test even before it's like live on Instagram, which is pretty useful. And again, all of that is free. Yeah. So sorry that last part was a little rushed. Are there any questions?
Thanks so much.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, so please, if you make filters, please let us know. We would love to see them and try them out. Maybe we can be your test hub for you. And thank you so much for attending. I hope I get to see some of you at some more workshops. And yeah, thank you for coming.